What was that? We knew you were ill. Okay, let's call this meeting in order. I believe the time is 6:34. Could I get a roll call, please?
Eisenman,
Here.
Estrie,
Here.
Fortato, Goss,
Here.
Harper,
Here.
Ingram,
Hello.
McGuire,
Here.
Patterson,
Here.
Rector, Storr, Summers, Taylor, Thorsland, Tinsley,
Present.
Bachaspati,
Here.
Wolken,
Here.
Young,
Here.
Clemens, Clifford, Cowart, Rosales.
Here. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda and addendum for today? Moved by Prangel, second by Christor. All discussion? All those in favor? Great. Nay? Motion passes. Could I get an approval of the minutes of August 13th, 2019? Moved by Aaron Esri,
Second.
second by
Young.
Young.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Motion passes. Public participation, I don't have any slips up in front. Is there any public participation from the audience back there? No? Seeing none, we'll move on to board communications. Charles?
Thank you, Chair Rosales. So we all know, if not, remember tomorrow's 9/11. So there will be a lot of memorial observation taking place tomorrow. I have this flyer here in support of one of the memorial observation observance at the American Legion Post number 559 in honor of Carletta Donaldson. I don't know if everybody know her or not, but she was a community activist, at least I thought so. Very involved in the community. She unfortunately passed away 3 months after her mother passed away. So they both were very instrumental in the community. So this will take place tomorrow, among many other observations that's taking place for 9/11. It'll be tomorrow at where it's going to be at the American Legion Post. I believe that's off. Which street is that? Anyhow, I know it's in the hood. It is in the hood. So it will be at 5 p.m. along with the 21 gun salute, and keynote speakers going to be there, different people as well. So that's for Carletta. Also, I'm a lifetime NAACP member, which NAACP stands for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. However, we do not discriminate and are open to all races, color, gender, culture, disabilities, etc. We having a save the date next month, our annual Freedom Fund dinner banquet, Friday, October 25th at the Holiday Inn in Champaign, 101 Trade Center Drive. With this year keynote speaker, this year will be U of I Chancellor Dr. Robert Jones. I am the membership chair, and I will be selling tickets soon within next week. It's $40 a ticket. You also can purchase tickets online. I have everybody email, so I can also email this information to you. And I think this would be a good venue for all people to attend, especially as elected official, and for just for the sake of networking with a lot of people of color. I think that'd be good because our voices do count, our votes do count, and we got some upcoming candidates for 2020 run. So spread the word, and I'll make sure that you guys get both of this information via email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles, for that presentation. Are there any other comments? Yes, Tinsley. James?
Just information for Mr. Young's. The event for Carletta Donaldson is at 704 Hickory Street.
Is that what that is? Thank you, because it's not posted on here. And I actually got this from our NAACP members.
What's that time again?
5 o'clock tomorrow.
5 o'clock
5
tomorrow.
o'clock in the parking lot there. Yep, American Legion. Thanks a lot,
Are there any
Tinsley.
other board comments? Kyle?
Just wanted to make a statement about this week is Amnesty Week at the Circuit Clerk's office. I put flyers by everybody's desk. If you have somewhere where you could display that or somebody who you could tell about that, please do. It's a very good event. Really gives a lot of people the opportunity to take down a barrier in their life, and it also brings in a lot of revenue for the county. So please spread the word, and just wanted to shout that out. And they're also going to be having some extended office hours. It's not on the flyer, but I do know that they're going to be staying, I think, through Thursday, open a little bit later. And Mr. Goss says they're open at 7:30. Thanks.
It's a one-week amnesty plan that started on the 9th, and it ends on the 13th, and it will be waiving, actually, collections and late fees only apply to traffic and criminal cases. So I would take advantage for those that are not in the audience, but in our television audience. Great. Are there any other comments from the board? Well, thank you. Policy, personnel, and appointments. Charles?
Thank you very much, Chair, again. Under the appointment and reappointment, number 1, the County of Executive Appointment for all location names. Under A, for Drainage District Commission, 1 term each, 9/1/2019 to 8/31/22. Is recommending Pasodum Consolidated Lucas, Meharry, who is appointed, Silver Creek Steve Mosler, who is appointed, Sagaman and drummer DeWitt Horse, who is appointed, Pasodum Slot Special Dennis Butler, who is appointed, number 1 Philo and Crediton Jerry Thiner, who is appointed, number 2 St. Joe and Ogden William Wilson, who is appointed, Beaver Lake Joe Arles, who is appointed, Upper and Bears River Basin, man, this is all rough, Stephen Winfall, who is appointed. Can I get a motion? Second by, first you got the names. Get the names of both, Harper and Rector. Okay, any discussion? Okay, go ahead. Dr. Stower.
Hi. I just wanted to convey my concern that that Dr. Young is having trouble pronouncing the names of some of the people because he's unfamiliar with them, unacquainted with them.
Yes.
And
I'm a doctor too, huh?
and this might have been remedied had he been present when they were interviewed.
And they say I'm a doctor too, right? Any more discussion? Okay.
Charles,
Yes. Roll.
I was reading this memorandum, and it's saying that these appointments were made with the consent of the county board, advice and consent. So you're saying that you wasn't informed.
I was informed in our policy advisory committee that the executive, the county executive would have finalized these names the day of this meeting by leaving this paper here. So that's the only information that I have. Of course, you guys, I'm not invited to the appointment process, so this is it. But she did inform me that she would have this paper that we all got today, that it would be here. So in regards to this other stuff, not knowing anything about that, in regards to board advice and consent following the interview, none of that. That's nothing new, nothing changed. And by the way, I'm going to reject all of these appointments. If I got to stand alone, I'm going to reject them. Does that answer your question? Sort of. Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I think this has been the practice of the county board for quite some time, and is a policy in the statute of the state. Further discussion, I don't think, is germane to this question. Thank you.
Please, anybody else? Rector?
Yeah, I sit on this committee also on vice chair, and to the best of my knowledge, these people have been appointed. There was one applicant. So whether you're there, whether I'm there, mathematically, these people have volunteered to serve these drainage districts. And we're not picking from two people. This isn't board of review. These are people who are volunteering to be public servants, and there was only one person that applied. So if we're going to start rejecting these people, that's just ridiculous. These people are volunteering pretty much like we are to do public service. It's not like these people are lining up. So the county executive is appointing these people by statute. This is the way it rolls.
Okay. Ponjel?
Yeah, I guess this is a question for Mr. Rector, really. So yeah, I agree that there's only one person appointed, so maybe the utility of having one of you folks in the meeting is limited. But when we've had some appointments where there have been multiple applicants, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And have either of you been involved in the meetings for those?
No,
Okay, thank you.
and I think I was more than fair to also to endorse and go along with those appointments too. But today is a new day for me. Who next? Tinsley?
Thank you, Mr. Young. Dr. Young, my question is, if one of these appointments were to not be successful in their obligation, who would fall as liable for that failure?
But I don't know. You may have to talk. I don't know. Like I said, I'm cut off from a lot of information, so
The drainage district,
I don't know.
I'm sorry?
if I may.
Go ahead. Yes. go ahead.
When we're talking here about the drainage districts, the counties, the appointment process is Darlene comes up with a name, presents it to us. The advice and consent is what we are doing now as the county board. This is the advice and consent part right now. And specifically talking about the Drainage District Commission and commissioners, if something goes wrong on one of those boards, that's on that board. There's nothing else that's going to happen with this board. It's not going to come back to us as a county that we're going to be liable for some lawsuit against a drainage district board. That'll go back to the drainage district board and be something that they'd have to take care of. They've got lawyers, they've got stuff like that. So other than making the appointments, it's pretty much all the county board has to do with these, specifically these drainage district commissioners and boards.
Anybody? Ingram?
Just because I don't remember, is there a stipend or a yearly amount of money paid to drainage district commissioners? Does anybody know that offhand?
None that I know of.
Yeah, it's completely volunteer.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Discussion, going once, twice. Okay, all in favor by saying aye. Any nay? No, me, Charles. Who else nay? Dr. Storer? Thank you, Dr. Storer. Motion passed. Okay, B, the county executive is recommending A, Lee Roberts Jr., who is appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeal, one position, term 12/1/2019 to 11/30/2024. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Ingram first, second motion. Coward, second. Any discussion? Dr. Storer?
Dr. Young,
Yes.
did you have an opportunity to interview Mr. Roberts for this position?
No, I did not. I don't know who he is. I was told that I know who he is, but I don't.
Okay. I personally am familiar with Mr. Roberts, and I would judge him to be quite suitable and for this position, and I urge the members of the board to favorably consider him.
Okay, any more discussion? Anybody else? Okay, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nay? No. Dr. Young? Anybody else? Nay for Summers, okay? Motion passed. Where we at? C, the county executive is recommending Rachel Voss, who is appointed to the Rural Transit Advisory Group, one position, term 9/20/2019 to 9/19/2021. Can I get a motion? Goss, second. Mike Ingram. Any discussion? Dr. Stover.
Dr. Young, did you have an opportunity to interview Ms. Voss for this position?
No, no Rachel Voss, no.
Are you familiar with her at all?
No, not at all.
Well, I read her application, and I think it's very nice that we should have somebody who has a disability serve on a board of this kind. I think that'll provide some very valuable insight into the group and improve rural transportation and access to transportation. I wish that we had other information on her from somebody who was at the interview.
Right. Absolutely. Any more discussion? Furtado?
I did notice that this person has recently moved to Urbana from Monticello and is missing one piece of proof of residency. Is there any sort of follow-up with the person? I guess I'm directing this to you to just make sure that the residency is established.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any nay? No, Dr. Young. Motion passed. D, the county executive is recommending Mark Ickerter, who is appointed to the Sador's Fire Protection, one position, term current date 4/30/2021. Can I get a motion? Rector first, second motion? Second? Okay. Keep getting your name mixed up. Any discussion? Any discussion? Ingram.
I'll ask the same question for the Drainage District. Is there any sort of compensation for Fire Protection District?
Don't know.
Darlene, would you happen to know that? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Any nay? No, Dr. Young. Motion passed. Okay, moving along to 2A, the county board chair appointments recommending a ad hoc 6-year IT plan committee. Can I get a motion? Jim Goss first, second motion, Dr. Storer. Any discussion?
Yes, I will, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to ask what the charge of the committee was going to be.
Right, that's what I was going to get ready to explain. We already did the 6-year strategic plan collectively as a board. We've also done the 6-year capital improvement plan for facilities. That has been done several years ago. And now we're going to move on to doing a 6-year IT planning committee so that we could have something solid, because our equipment, from what I gathered, I said 30 years. They corrected me. They said 40 years has been since we've updated the system. And I said, really? But basically, to get all the departments, to get all the county on the same software and get the same licenses and basically buy from the same vendors. And this is going to be a paid committee as well. I believe that as an ad hoc committee, it doesn't get paid the full amount as a board committee. But you will also be provided transportation. There's not going to be very many meetings, and we wanted to be to be inclusive. So we would recommend Jody Walken and Aaron Ezra, Republicans, Leah Taylor and Pranjal Vachaspati, Democrats. From the staff, we would have Andy Rhodes, and we will have Darlene Klopel and myself, and we will have one community individual to represent the community and bring some insight. He's a retired IT personnel from the university. His name is Rao Srinivasa. That's Srenivasa.
All right.
Srinivasa. and from the community. And basically, we'll meet a couple times before the end of the year and hopefully put something logically and cohesively together for you all to approve and move forward. So this is just giving us permission to move forward, putting together this ad hoc committee. Chris?
Okay, any more discussion? Stephanie?
I just want to commend the county executive and everybody who's serving on this. This is something that's long overdue. One of the reasons I think that some of the crisis budget conversations that we've had is because this is long overdue. So kudos to you for getting this done.
Dr. Storer?
Thank you. I'd add my similar sentiments. I think we're all familiar with the rather antique AS400 that is still providing service, even at, how many years has that been used? Did you say 40?
I had indicated 30, but I was correcting it. It said 40 years since it has been updated. So they're having a lot of issues currently.
Kudos
and
for
Aaron
you.
could attest to
Kudos for
that.
you for kind of moving forward on this.
Sure, thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any nay? Motion pass. Okay, B, my proposal to the Champaign County Board to recommend to review and update the language of our county board rules and procedures. Discussion only. Since this is my proposal, I'd like to start off by inviting you to pages 19 and 20 of this agenda. Okay. So let me start off by saying I'm really glad that this county board meeting is being recorded, and for the people and the constituents and the voter to know what's taking place in regards of not being able to attend these meetings. In order for them to have references to go back to, this is a good thing in regards of the stuff being recorded, so this stuff it can be some kind of for the sake of the future in regards of people looking back at it. I have always been adamant and passionate from day one about being more transparent and inclusive when it comes to these appointment process and sitting in on these interviews as a public servant. The language here I am proposing and wanting to update is just one simple bullet point. Number 2, italicized, that simply says, shall be invited to attend all appointment interviews. This is not only about the law and statute, says and how it is being interpreted, which is on the next page of page 20, but is also about acting on good faith and will and merit, moral consciousness, humane, and ethics. Ethics mean a good person, good virtue, and doing the right thing. Ethical consideration and ethical conduct equal to developing good people skills and decisions and practices that make people feel comfortable. Legal scholars do know this, that laws are incomplete when it comes to dealing with people behavior. I'm going to say that again. Legal scholars do know that laws are incomplete when it comes to dealing with people behavior, because with ethic issues, it can be embraced or denied. When making decisions to do the right or wrong thing, it is your choice. You choose to be more transparent or inclusive when it comes to these appointment process. Is the reason why I revised this policy. Instead of it all about choosing one way that can be a good collective practice for all, which there's nothing that is illegal or punishable by law if we choose to be more open and inclusive. However, it is a choice based on our personalities and practices that we choose. Depending on where we go with this tonight, I would like for eventually to do a resolution and then eventually vote on this as soon as possible. And I can write that up. So I know there's some, the policy and rules that she indicated, the executive, the county executive person on page 21. But just like I said, this is not, and some of this language can be argued. When it says about, in B on page 20, D, appoint with the advice and consent of the board person to serve as the various boards and commission to which appointments are provided by law to be made by the board. I'm asking right here for the executive person to expand her understanding on this. This can be interpreted in many different ways, but then this person has the law with them on their side. So I'm not talking about law. I'm talking about moral consciousness. I'm talking about ethics, because as human beings, you cannot separate who you are when it comes down to decision making. So one minute you can say, no, I don't want you on here, but the next person may come along, I want you, if they make a recommendation or they make a suggestion. So, and in regards of past practices, okay, it is what it is, but it's a new day. We need to learn how to open up our mind. And if someone is asking to be part of these, the process, what is there to hide? What is there, what are you trying to hide? So once again, I'm really glad that this is being recorded. And that's how I feel about it. Like I said, there's nothing punishable or illegal about it. So, any other thoughts? Yes.
Just a comment with regard to the memorandum that our executive presented to us. I'm certainly not going to argue with statute. That's very clear. But at the end of the paragraph under that, the final sentence indicates that this process follows precedent of past county board chairs in making appointments. Past precedent dictated the county board chair made decisions, not an executive. There really is not precedent in this matter. This is new. When we had chairs making these appointments, when Chair Petrie was forming the Racial Justice Task Force, she selected a committee of county board members to make those choices and then made her decision based on the advice of the committee. I had the pleasure of having lunch with former Chair Weibel today, and I spoke with Chair Weibel about it. He indicated to me that he was always open to advice from county board members on who should be selected, and that sometimes he actively sought such advice from individual board members. These are difficult positions to fill. It would seem that a prudent leader would look to others to have additional information on who would be good people to place in these positions. Our county board rules, which our executive does not mandated to follow, but that we passed in December, indicate that the chair and vice chair should review these recommendations and, should review and provide recommendations. I spoke with both the vice chair and chair, and my recollection was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, vice chair, but you indicated that there had been no effort to seek out any kind of recommendations from you on any of the positions that we're looking at. So the idea that this is the same practice that we followed in the past is simply not accurate.
Anybody else for this discussion? Oh, go ahead. It's okay.
So I guess I would have a different view of your recollection, because as I said, it's the same practice. It's just the executive that's following the process. And from my discussion with her, if there are people, and I think she's had discussion with some of the other board members about who is actually living in these rural areas, she would take those recommendations. But as the statute says, as the county board chair was the one in the past who made the appointments, she has a responsibility to make the appointments. And most of them, from my understanding, are made by phone call, not by meeting. And alls we're doing is interfering with that process. And we've done it for months now, interfering with these committees and organizations to properly do their work because we haven't made the appointments. And that's not on her, that's not on the committees, that's on this board, and mostly the Democrat side, who doesn't seem to want to do the public's business. They want to do their own political agendas and make decisions based on politics rather than doing their jobs.
Summers?
I really don't want to get into a back and forth, but it
Oh,
is
people will
difficult to
eventually.
accept some of that when our executive has referred to this board as a rubber stamp.
Well, I will say this much. I haven't been here that long, but the statute also doesn't support any of these standings committees. Therefore, I feel what's the point of me being on any of the standing committee if I'm just going to rubber stamp or go along with everything that the executive, this new form of government says. I don't feel that that's right because the statute does not support any of it. It does support this right here taking place in regards of just, we can have all the meetings here. We don't have to have these standing finance and social justice and policy. We don't have to have those at all because the statute doesn't say anything about it. But once again, I'm talking about moral consciousness. I'm not talking about actually statute. I'm just talking about developing better communication that you do see in a well-rounded democracy and how policy actually work. So I strongly suggest some people, well, maybe perhaps the executive person take a basic class on civics. And that's just how I truly feel because in regards to myself, no, I'm not going to go along and just rubber stamp stuff that I do not know. I don't know none of these people. And I don't care if it's rural or local. I have that right to actually have the right to object. And that's what she choose. Oh, well. Anybody else? Yes.
I think when we had the issue with the forest preserve was a perfect example of when she did take advice from people because that was all ready to go and then everything changed. So she's always got her email open. She's always got her phone there. Anybody wants to give her advice at any time, she will take that advice. That's the way it's always worked. The chair made the appointment and it was ratified and endorsed by this board. So I'm going back with Mr. McGuire. It's like, yeah, it's a different person. It's a different design. But when we get one person that wants to volunteer on a drainage district, and as my colleague, Mr. McGuire says, you guys want to play politics, we spent 25 minutes. And what do we got? Darlene has made it clear in our policy meetings. I voted not to even put this on the agenda because by statute, you can do a resolution, Dr. Young. It's not going to change anything. By statute, she told us in that meeting, she gets to make the appointments.
Right.
There's nothing to change. We can talk about this tonight. You can bring a resolution to the next meeting.
Right.
She's not going to change it.
That's okay.
So we spent 25 minutes again, and our county executive says she's not going to change her policy. So I'm not sure why we're spending this time on a proposed resolution when a proposed resolution isn't going to change anything. Thank you.
Real briefly, before I get to do Stephanie, that's the reason why I'm bringing this because my mind, and I know I'm right, it's not all about just us at the board. There's people out there. We are on video. We're being recorded. So I can also let the constituent know. There's a few times I went along with her when we went door-to-door campaigning, and you say things like, I'm going to be transparent and I'm going to be inclusive. And then you get in a position, this is a very form of how politics work. That's why I define it as politics. And that's not going to happen underneath my watch, if I can say so. I know how to go about and reach out to people. I want people to be able to hear this and see this. And I'm glad it's being recorded so that they can see it. So, and in regards of what happened in the past, I mean, you know, you have to learn that things evolve and it grows. I respect the past, but also we got to open up to different ideas, different vendors, because at the same time you can manipulate certain things. And like I said, laws is not designed to deal with human behavior. So I'm not talking about laws per se, even though they can be debated and interpreted several different ways. I'm talking about moral consciousness and doing the right thing. And if someone come and asks you that, just like a school teacher, so a person don't learn this way, you should be opening up to learn some other kind of way. If we have any teachers here, any educators. right? You know that's true, absolutely. So if someone is telling you, my child learned this way, you should be open to embrace that. That's all part of democracy. That's real politics, you see? And that's all I'm saying. And I know the history of African Americans in regards of how things operate. And they manipulate, and they smother, and they do things that's sophisticated that can move. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. Especially when you tell the constituent and voters you're going to be transparent and inclusive, and you take part in different events, and then you don't do it. No, not on my watch.
I just want to make sure that people that are listening understand that Dr. Young is simply asking to be invited to attend all appointment interviews, not to participate in scheduling, not to speak, simply to be able to sit and attend the meetings. That's the full sentence that is in this proposal that he's putting forward. And I would challenge anybody to tell me that that's unreasonable.
Anybody? Oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry. Okay, yes.
I just want to clarify
Okay.
in regards to you playing politics.
Yes.
Darlene is still a Democrat, right?
I think so. I don't know. And
Okay.
at this point, I really don't know.
All right, just checking. Because, I mean, like,
Personally, I don't know.
I'm just saying, I don't know how you play politics with two Ds.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So you have to watch everybody with this. That's why I call it politics. You don't know who to trust. So I don't define myself as a traditional politician.
One more
I'm more
question.
of a, I'm more of a,
One other
Go ahead.
question. Some of those appointments have been Democrats, right?
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just as colleague Rector over there had mentioned, the forest preserve, I think, was the thing that you brought up. I would agree that that was a circumstance where we had some discussion and something changed. My only comment kind of on that is that the way that that kind of happened was very late, and somebody had already been announced and then got pulled and then announced again, and it would be great if we could maybe, I don't want anybody to ever feel like they've gotten something and then not get it again, you know, and so that did feel a little bit herky-jerky to me in terms of, I can't believe I just said herky-jerky on a microphone. But it didn't, like, if we're talking about that as an example, I think it's great that we can have a discussion and everything like that, but that seemed to happen the timing of that was very bad. And I don't ever want anybody to be announced, pulled, and then somebody else announced in their place again.
Well, how you going to know it when you're not there? Anybody else? Yes.
I appreciate and respect Dr. Young. This is very, you're very passionate about that, and I appreciate that. I just have one question because I'm a detail person.
Okay.
Your language is just, you shall be invited to attend all appointment interviews. If the appointment is set and you're not able to attend it, if this does pass, are you okay with that? Like,
Yes,
my
yes, I'm
fear
o-
is, it's hard enough
It's
to
okay.
get a couple of people lined up to be at a meeting, let alone
Right.
get 3 schedules or 4. And so so as long as you're invited,
Right.
you're good, even if you
Right.
can't necessarily attend
Yes,
that day.
absolutely, not a problem. But the point is not inviting at all, and you ask the reason why, just, I don't want you there. And no board is not going to shape me in any form or way or fashion, as I was told by the county executive person, in any kind of way. But real quick, James, let me say this, man, we can move on. I'm not no tradition. I ran for office as I'm not a traditional politician. I'm more of a thinker, intellectual. So I did not choose politics. Politics chose me. And there's an old saying that says, thinkers and intellectual on the ground level, they find answers and solve real world problems. Politicians don't, because they play politics. And I stand by that. So anybody else? Stephanie.
Just for a point of clarity, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correct. Is that the chair and the vice chair?
Yes.
So this would apply to both, and I could see, like,
Yes.
for example,
Absolutely both.
I mean, I know there's some seats that are by their nature Republican seats, so to me it would make a ton of sense to have John in on those interviews.
Yeah, he knows it.
Just because I think his perspective would be valuable, right? And if the political sort of makeup, to me this doesn't really have a lot to do with politics. I think it just has to do with, I do think good interview practices show that more people in the room.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out collaborative process, but like Steve said, it's a pretty low bar, just invited to and I'm not real sure what the downside is. If, Jody, as you said, like, this is the dates it is, if you can make it, you can make it. And look, if it's a phone interview, nowadays you could dial people in just to listen and be more familiar with these positions. I mean, frequently, we get this few sentences that are on here, and my guess is the conversations that happen in these interviews are a little bit more detailed, and you get to know the person a little bit better.
That's right.
So there's frequently, we don't know a lot about the folks, right? I mean, I have reached out to Darlene, and she's always answered the questions, but it would be nice to have representatives from, and I think from both parties, just to have the chance to sit down in the interviews. That's all that this proposal is trying to do.
Right, and that is to go, and John, he knows that. He knows it, because I sent him the information, so don't go public and say you don't know that. But yes, to clarify, it'll be both of us, not just me.
Yeah, I haven't heard very many Republicans on our side discussing wanting to do this. We understand that this is a responsibility that Darlene has by statute. It's been driven month after month by the Democrats on this board, which is how I defined it. Just because it's a partisan issue for you guys. So don't define it as a way of something that we want to be involved in these interviews. It's not our responsibility. We need to stay in our lane. We're making it difficult for these committees, making it difficult for the interviews. We need just to move on.
Okay. Yes, Stanley.
So you're saying that chairman is supposed to stay in his lane and appoint some appointees he don't know anything about? Like, that is textbook definition of a rubber stamp government. So,
Bonjel.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about if a constituent comes to me and says, this person on this committee, did me dirty or whatever, why'd you appoint them? Then I want to be able to say, well, because, the chair of the policy committee or the vice chair of the policy committee, along with the county executive, talk to them and sort of vouch for them. I'm not expecting to be in these meetings. Certainly, that's why we have sort of this delegation that's done by, having these committees. And so, on many of these, I've voted yes because I sort of have faith that the people in these, the people representing these districts will take the heat from whichever constituents complain about them and will have done their due diligence themselves. For some of them, I've voted no because I've heard complaints about the committees themselves, and I wasn't confident that the appointee would be a good fit for that committee, and I'll continue to do that with the information I have, and having less information makes me more likely to vote to be confident that I could defend that vote to a constituent. So that's where I'm coming from. Just as an aside, I know we've talked about how we've done things in the past. I mean, I don't think there's anyone on this board, if I ask the question, do you think this board has been a model of good government for the last 10 years, would raise their hand. So.
Anybody else? Ingram?
Just that as far as I know, our lane is advice and consent, and I guess if we're trying to figure out how exactly we go about that, that's not deviating from a lane.
Right. Like I said, there's several ways you can interpret things, but I agree. Anybody else? Discussion? Okay. Well, like I said, eventually I'm going to create a resolution and then see where we go from there. I'm going to push forward for a vote. If it don't go forward, then it just don't go forward. I hope it does, but if it don't, oh well. Okay, number C, another proposal by Dr. Young to the Champaign County Board recommending to review and update travel policy, then addendum to the County Board rules and procedure discussion only. Once again, since I revised this rule as well, which can be found on pages 21 and 22 and on. Just for the sake of clarity, let me see where we at. Oh, just for the sake of clarity, I wanted to include more information about our travel policy so in the future we can not have any more discrepancies in how our travel policy and per diem work. I've been told by more knowledgeable people in this area of travel policies that regardless of how much money we are allowed to spend per year, big or small, it's always best to have more information about it than less. Similar to how other local businesses, agency, and other county board work throughout the state, in this area of travel policy, all of these different places and governmental institution policy travel rules are a lot more thicker. and they are more detailed than ours. More rules are always better than less rules for the sake of clarity. So I am proposing we indicate and reprint on our county board rule book on the front title covered pages, the word to be appendix, then include it. Then we will include, hopefully we will include the 10 extra pages separately that I also submitted for backup information that we will go along with our county board procedure book. I also can draft up a resolution, and hopefully if we move forward with this, I can have this, hopefully have this ready by the next one of our next board meeting. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Yes.
I had a few. It says somewhere, and I can't find it now, that we have to have approval before we travel or seek approval. Who are we seeking approval from as a county board member? We'll start with that one. How's that process work? Let's just start with that question.
On the county, I don't know, but when I work for the University of Illinois, you had to go to your department head, your supervisor, and they approve your travel prior to, but I don't know how it work here. Yes.
On page 23, under Article 2, Item B, it says subject. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, my bad. I misread that.
Well, that's kind of my question. We're all individual county board members.
I
Who do we seek approval from?
Right. And I agree with you, and I sort of had read through this, and my understanding was that, like, you know, how we sometimes in the past we've gotten requests for reimbursement from county board members. My understanding is that would have to be done in advance.
Right.
From the county
board. Darlene, do you have any suggestions on this?
I actually found it, if I can point to it. It's page 31. Under Article 7, approval of expenses. Expenses for travel, meals, and lodging of any member of the county board may only be approved by roll call vote at an open meeting of the county board.
Okay.
Expenses for travel, meals, and lodging of any member of the county board may only be approved by roll call vote at an open meeting of the county board.
Does that say prior or does it say after?
It's an item B on 31, documentation of expenses. Before the expense for the travel, you get approval from the county board.
So basically approved from the county board. Okay.
Another question says, county-owned vehicles should be used whenever possible. Am I insured to drive a county vehicle?
Just clarify the last point. When it uses the word before in B, it looks like before an expense for travel, meals, or lodging may be approved for any county board member, the following minimum documentation must be submitted. So the word before is not referencing before or after the travel. It's saying before it's approved, you'd have to turn in that documentation. So I wanted to clarify that we didn't answer that question.
Anybody else for discussion?
Can the county executive make comment on this, please?
So the way this has been interpreted in the past, and that has been in practice this year so far, is that the board sets aside a budget. That's the prior approval for travel for the board members. And the board chair then has usually gone on some kind of trip with to Springfield or those kind of things. There's very minimal amount of money in that account. So usually it's specified during the budget process how much money will be needed for specific things. So for example, in the past, the county board chair has gone to 2 meetings a year. So that's what's put in the budget for an amount for those 2 meetings. That would be considered prior approval, but yes, there's receipts that are collected afterward to account for that, and those must be brought back to the board for a roll call vote at that point. So this year, some county board members, more county board members went to a meeting, and they brought the information back to the board for approval of those receipts. And so far, you haven't gone over the budget for the year for the the total board amount. So you haven't had to do a budget amendment or anything. That's how it's been working in practice, that there's budget amounts set aside for county board travel, which is prior approved by the board through a roll call vote, and that's how it's been handled.
So from that description, what you're saying is, we're setting a budget, and then where it's used is based on whatever the county board member wants to use it for, as we did in the past, as long as we don't spend, until we spend all the money. And we're not quite sure how much we've spent based on what we've traveled, because this last year, we didn't know what we spent until after we spent it. 'Cause we had
Right,
a
this
few
year,
trips.
things came to the board after the fact, which I don't think has happened in previous years, but as I mentioned, in previous years, mostly other board members did not go except for the board chair to one or two things, so the budget's pretty minimal for that purpose. And I believe in practice, the county board chair would say, if he's not going to a meeting, someone else could go. That's how it's been working.
Anybody else? Discussion on this?
I'd like
Once?
to
Oh,
say-
go ahead. Mrs. Scoward.
I'd like to say that I was part of the group that went up to Springfield
Yes.
and went up there for the conference they had up there.
Mhm.
But it was a little different because the United Council
Council.
paid for our trip. They reimbursed the county for the trip that we made, which was lodging. They bought food. Well, we paid for our food there, but the day that we had the meeting, they provided food. But it didn't come out of the budget of the general court. It was reimbursed to the county. And before the budget got slashed, we'd go on trips. The county board members would go on trips. They'd have so many Republicans and so many Democrats would go, sometimes it'd be about 5 or 6 of us would go on those trips. It wasn't just confined just to the county board chair. So that's the way we used to do it until about 10 years ago.
Okay. Does that answer you, McGuire?
Well, I'm fine with going on trips. I just don't see this as an organized way to do spending for a budget. I mean, it still just lets people go on trips. It doesn't spend the money in a controlled way, that's all.
Okay. Anybody else?
It's still got to get approved through, it's still got to get approved through a roll call vote though, right?
Right. Well, that's my understanding.
Resolution here.
Like.
This is discussion only.
If, hypothetical.
Oh, I apologize.
Right. No, he's just asking a question. Jim Goff.
Yeah, if you look on Article 2, Item C, all travel shall be approved by either appointed or elected officials as department heads prior to the beginning of travel. Might I suggest that it'd be fine with me if we put the county board chair as the level of approval for the county board level, because we really don't have, it doesn't, you're talking about wanting to make it more clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to have somebody that can approve it ahead of time, because somebody can watch, the county board chair can watch and say, hey, we're getting close on budget. There's not really money to do that, or you might have to reach into your pocket and cover the gas or something if you want to go to this. But might I suggest that we add that at some point, someplace here? And it seems to logically fit under Article 2, Item C.
I have a lot going on. Can you write that down, what you said, and just
Yeah.
talk to me afterwards about
Yeah.
it? And then, yes. Anybody else? Summers?
I just want to point out to the listening public, when we're talking about going on trips, we're really talking about our conferences and continuing education for board members.
Absolutely.
And that is a real benefit that unfortunately, as Ms. Cowart pointed out, with budget cuts, there has simply not been money available for board members to do that. I know when I sat on the 116 board, we would go to at least one conference a year. We'd be able to sit in on different classes, different sessions. Very helpful in terms of knowing process, in terms of your awareness as a board member. I cannot speak strongly enough to a board having the ability to send some members to some of these conferences simply to try and make this board a better, more educated body.
Right, amen.
And it's not, we're not talking about going on trips randomly
Right.
to just run around and see stuff. We're talking about going to learn how to work better for the residents of Champaign County.
Spoke very well, Summers. So that's what I'm all about, professional development and growth. That's what I'm used to. So I'm just trying to, hopefully, I know that we have budget issues, but hopefully we can, one day in the future, go to more conferences and learn how things should be. At least I think so. Those professional development conferences, they does help. It helps out a lot. At least I think so. It's mandated by certain jobs and professions. So I'm just trying to introduce it to the county board, or I don't know, maybe not introduce it, just they haven't been going in the past, I guess. I don't know. But by being an educator, this is what we do. And plus, it happened at the university a lot too, and I had several different jobs up there. Any more discussions about this?
I just agreed. I think we need a travel policy, and I think you're right to bring it up. Thank you.
It's all good in the hood. Thank God.
And it's my
You can smile.
understanding that these elected department heads have their own budget as
Okay.
far as their travel policy. They have
Right.
money in their budget.
And that's fine, and Danny, I'm just saying, I think it's good for that. I don't know, y'all won't look at me as the bad sheep or a rabble rouser. It just, I'm trying to share with you guys how I am experienced by trying to share information. Is always good to learn. So, and Darlene, Lorraine Cower and I just went to a workshop just this past weekend with UCCI. So some of the stuff I'm conveying with you guys tonight, I learned from them in terms of what's the best practices, what's the best way to do X, Y, and Z. You see what I'm saying? And that's all it is. So I think it's really good, and maybe perhaps we'll see things differently when they go about defining how does democracy and politics really work, you see. So that's it. Anybody else discussion on this? Okay, moving along. D, other business. I have no other business. Does anybody else? Okay, go. This was business, right?
Yeah, and I'm bringing this up in other business because the chair's report has a list of county exec appointments expiring August 31st, obviously past August 31st. But one of the listed issues is a board of review vacancy. And during the discussion of the board of review budget, Zebi, talking about hard names to bring up, there's an open position that Mr. Sales has applied for, as I understand, and maybe the county exec can explain this more, or maybe more clearly. But if he's applied for this position and this is still open, I kind of wonder why he isn't being brought up for this position. Obviously, if he's been on the board, as they've explained many times, or was discussed, and Mr. Zebo said, he's got great amount of experience. He understands the position. We need somebody that provide public service to this community, that understands the buildings, how to do the job, the experience.
McGuire, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to cut you off, but we're not there yet.
Well,
We are
no,
underneath other business.
this is just informational. I'm in other business
Right.
to talk about this informational material. But this is one of those vacancies that we've kind of talked about a few minutes ago, where something's not being filled, that we need to get filled. And we have somebody who wants to take the position, but for the last couple of months, we haven't filled this position. If we're waiting for somebody who is trying to either pass some test, because this takes some knowledge and a license, and then we're going to end up with somebody inexperienced to fill the position, I don't understand why we're waiting for that. Darlene, can you explain why this position hasn't been filled and this person hasn't, you haven't brought this appointment forward?
The Board of Review position expired a couple of months ago. It's been several months, actually, and I did bring a candidate before the board. The board did not approve that candidate, so the position is still open. There is not another qualified candidate at the present time to bring before the board, and I have not received any indication that the board would approve the position, the person that I brought forward before, so I haven't brought them back. In actuality, in this particular board, the person is continuing to serve in that position until a new person is appointed. So he is still continuing in that spot.
So we are waiting for somebody who possibly would be less qualified for the position because you haven't filled, we haven't accepted this nominee for the position. This position is somebody who's more than well qualified, but we're playing games and we're not filling the position as a county board.
Let me say this,
And
County,
this person could fill it.
1 minute. County Chair Rosales, is it appropriate for us to be talking about this now under other business? He's
Totally
down
up to
and
you.
on E.
You're the chair of this committee.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure.
So if you
Let's-
wanted to
let's
wait
keep
until
moving.
this discussion
Yeah,
happens
just
at
wait.
This
towards
is
the
other
end?
business, and I'm allowed to talk about other business that is part of this committee, which are these appointments.
Okay, Panjal.
Yeah, I think if it's out of our lane to comment on sort of advice and consent of these candidates, it's absolutely out of our lane to comment that the county board, the county executive should be appointing people or nominating people for positions. That is absolutely the county executive's lane, who she brings forth to this board, and that is not our lane.
In other words, I'm stepping on some toes, aren't I? Because
guess you are,
she
Jim.
appointed the person, you pull this stunt like you're pulling with everybody else, and we don't have somebody who's qualified, more than qualified. We're talking about reviews that are worth $100 million, and we need somebody qualified to do these, and you're holding up the appointments.
Okay, McGuire, I'm going to move on.
No, can I
Yeah,
say something?
Go ahead. You got the last word. Don't move on.
Mr. McGuire, how you know they qualified? Did you interview them?
The guy's been on the review board for a long period of time. Mr. Zebo said so that night.
I mean, so yet again, we just taking somebody else's word a mouth. I mean, he could have been just cruising through a job like anybody else. I mean, like, come on, man. I mean, like, y'all keep saying.
You know he's not, but yet you're voting against him.
I mean, I don't know enough to vote yes. I mean, I don't know enough to vote for him.
Okay, anybody else have any more business? Moving along to E, Chair Report 1, County Executive Appointment expiring August 31st, 2019, information only. The Drainage District Commission vacancy, one each, the 11 locations that are here. Those 11 locations there, I'm not going to go through all of them. And also the other vacancies and expiration dates. There are 9 of them listed here. Man, I had to read all those off. I got to read them all off. Woo! Who want to read them for me? You want to read them, Panjel?
Well, I'm happy to read them if you'd like, but I just have one sort of request for the chair and for the county executive and whoever's making the agenda. If we could have, some of these have like particular requirements. Like I know Mass Transit District, I think this one needs to be a Democrat, and sometimes it needs to be a Republican, and likewise for some of these other boards, or sometimes they need to be a doctor or something. So if we could just get that on this portion of the agenda, because then if there's someone who needs to be a doctor and I know someone who's interested in that board, who's a doctor, I can sort of extra hard try to recruit them for that, and so on. So I think that would be helpful for us, So just a request to whomever's making these agendas.
All right, that's cool. That sounds great. Okay, I read them off. Lower Big Slope, Nelson Moore, Fairfield, who was that? Rump, Summers, number 1, St. Joe, number 6, Union, number 1, Philo and Urbana, West Birch, 2 Towns of Scott, Sauk Forth, Willow Branch, Union, Staten, and Ogden. Other vacancies, Champaign-Urbana, Mass Transit District, 1 vacancy, unexpired term 12/31/2019. Community Action Board, 1 position, term present date 12/31/2022. Sodium Fire Protection District, 1 vacancy, expired April 2019. Clemens Cemetery Board, 2 vacancies, expired June 2015. Locust Grove Cemetery Association, 1 vacancy, expired 2015. Stern Cemetery Board, 1 vacancy, expired 2019, June 2019. Bailey Cemetery Board, 1 vacancy, current term ending 2020. Board of Review, 1 vacancy, expired 2021. Dewey Community Public Water District, 1 vacancy, expiring May 2021. Any more information about those? Ingram.
Just wanted to clarify, so for the first list, which is the drainage districts, these are appointments that have expired at the end of last month, and meaning that what we're putting out right now is that this is application time for, I mean, like, theoretically, we would have already had them, but are we saying that we don't have applications currently at these right now? So no applications for anything under this entire, okay. So informationally, we're just trying to find applicants for them. Great, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, NF, items on the consent agenda are, I believe it's A1, A through D. That's voted no? Oh, yeah, oops. So there's none, right? Absolutely. So there's A to A. Is that correct? All righty. A to A. I turn it back over to you, Chair Rosales.
Thank you, Dr. Young. Next, we'll have Kyle Patterson. Go ahead and give us a review of the Justice and Social Services.
Well, if you
Kyle?
blink, you can miss me on the agenda. Don't really have any items for this month other than the Lincoln Legacy Committee annual report for 2019, which is information only, and the July 2019 Rosecrans Reentry Financial Report, which is also information only. And those will be placed on file without objection. Other business, is there any other business? Saying, yes.
Yeah,
Raj is fine.
in the past, when Rosecrans has come and spoken to us, we had some questions about sort of their, the gap when IDOC was not giving them information. Is any of this relevant to that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right, anybody else? All right, and there's no chair's report, so that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Next, we have Finance. Jim Goss, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 10A, number 1, we've got a budget transfer request, number 19-0008, from Fund 619 Tax Sale Automation Fund to Department 026 County Treasurer. The total amount's $6,000. The reason is for board transfer, a board-approved transfer from professional services line to cover increased temporary salaries and wages. Is there such a motion? Mr. Vajaspati, second. Ms. Cowart, discussion.
Could you explain this a little bit more, what it's about? Do you know, sir?
Yes, this is a movement of $6,000 from the automation fund to their regular, the treasurer's fund, to cover the temporary salaries for former treasurer Welch and former deputy clerk Little. And they've been in the office helping out, and so this is a transfer of $6,000 to help pay them something for their assistance.
Thank you.
Any other, Mr. McGuire?
So are they having success in fixing the issue, and do we know how our budgets look and the impact on what that'll do, so we know that our final budgets will be correct? Do we know how much money's actually in our funds now?
I'm not able to answer that.
Tammy, do you know if we're having any success?
We are having a meeting tomorrow with Ms. Pressing to talk about the revenues that I'm aware of that haven't been posted yet to the AS 400. I think that they have been catching up on posting some of the cash receipts. However, to my knowledge, we have not reconciled at all in fiscal year 2019. So again, I think they are catching up on some of the cash receipts. I'm still aware of several revenue streams that do not have all of the revenues the county has received posted, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that those are accurately recorded.
Okay, could you please find out what kind of reports we might be getting? Hopefully, Mr. Welch can help her work on that, and how much longer, and whether they have the money in reserve to get us through how many months it might take for Mr. Welch to fix the problems the treasurer's having. Maybe, I mean, that might be questions you have to ask tomorrow.
Yeah, we plan to have weekly meetings.
Weekly meetings?
Weekly meetings between the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, and my office to track what's still outstanding and needs to be done. And Mr. Welch is our resource to tell us how to do it.
Okay, great, thank you. It's great. It's nice that Mr. Welch can come back and help the treasurer's office correct their problems. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item B, treasurer monthly reports. There is some information, fund balance reports only up on the website for April, May, June, and July. And they are up there. They were posted up there, but they are fund balance reports only. Item 2, a resolution to execute a written agreement of the Champaign County, Illinois Tax Sale Certificate Purchase Number 113 as to Champaign County, Illinois Tax Sale Certificate of Purchase Number 113, permanent parcel number 14-03-32-400-015. Is there such a motion? Mr. Esri, his second. Ms. Furtado. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to do an omnibus fashion unless there's somebody that wants to split any of them out. Okay, so this will take a little while. Resolution authorizing the cancellation of the appropriate certificate of purchase on real property, permanent parcel number 14-03-35-429-008, permanent parcel number 20-03-34-428-002, permanent parcel number 20-03-34-428-004, permanent parcel number 20-09-02-178-022, and permanent parcel number 20-09-28-305-004. Is there such a motion? Mr. Patterson, second. Mr. Rosales, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And finally, I seek a motion for a resolution authorizing the cancellation of the appropriate certificate of purchase on a mobile home, permanent parcel number 20-900-0028. Is there such a motion? Mr. Rosales, second. Mr. Clifford, I do have a question to be sure that we're not missing a number in that actual. It appears that we're missing some numbers in that, but I'm not as confident on mobile homes. It'll be on page 47. Yeah, so we're sure that that's I guess it matches the certificate, so. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Auditor C, the monthly reports are up for August, so then check those out on the website. Item D, if it's okay with the committee, I will put on the county clerk's, number one, I'll put the county clerk's August 2019 monthly report on file. Item 2, we have an issuance of RFP 2019-005 for Champaign County Clerk voter registration and poll book software and vendor support. Is there such a motion? Mr. Patterson, Mr. Rosales, second. Discussion. Yeah, the county clerk. Okay, I guess the county executive can answer questions if there are questions. Is there any discussion regarding this?
Well, I was going to ask a question, but it had to do with the difference between the poll books and the voting machines, because I was going to have some confusion between the two of them, because they don't work together, but yet he wants to replace all the voting machines. So I wanted to see, and then how much this actually costs. But
So the poll books are being bought out of this year's grant money, which you guys approved that he would get, and so now we're accepting the grant that he applied for, and then the poll books will be purchased out of that fund in a reimbursement basis. That was the intent of it when he applied for it.
This one talks about an issuance of an RFP. This is not the Hobby.
Well, it turns out that the state, I think it's Board of Elections, requires that they do a bid process because it's a large enough amount. So they had to come back to you for an RFP rather than just buying them.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, item 3. I seek a motion for Illinois State Board of Elections voter registration state grant 2020 acceptance agreement. Is there such a motion? Mr. Ingram, second. Mr. Vachaspati, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item E. County Executive Labor Management Health Insurance Committee recommendation for employee health insurance and related benefits for fiscal year 2020. Is there such a motion? Mr. Clifford, second. Mr. Summers, discussion. I would note that this was passed unanimously out of the Labor Management and Health Insurance Committee. Mr. Storr. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, was there?
No, go ahead. Ask your question. If it's something that we can't answer,
Okay.
he can answer.
I just kind of had a note, saw that this was from Blue Cross, I think, and I just wondered if a local healthcare provider, Health Alliance, was considered. I assumed that they were.
My recollection is they did not submit a bid. I'm trying to recall, did Health Alliance even submit a bid to us?
Health Alliance did not submit a formal proposal this year.
Other questions that might pertain to this one? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Thank you for staying so long. Okay. Next, we have recommendation for salaries for the county board chair, circuit clerk, auditor, coroner, and recorder for terms that begin in December of 2020. Is there such a motion? There is a recommendation, Mr. Vachispati, there is a recommendation in the packet.
Yeah, so I mean, can I move one of these options then? Yeah.
Let's start with the recommendation,
Oh, sure, for 2020 and
and
2021.
then we can talk about 2022 and 23.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I'll move the recommendation for 2020 and 2021.
Is there a second? Mr. Rosales, discussion on this? I would note that we talked about in our finance agenda review, if you notice the smaller increase for the auditor, coroner, and recorder, those were to get those three offices have less staff. So that was to get them down. It's kind of been a practice in the past that they should make a little bit less because they have less FTE to take care of. So that gets that more in line, that 0.24 for that first year gets it back in line. Other discussion? Mr. Ingram.
Since it's under this recommendation, the comparison with other counties, I just was looking at the data for that, and actually made a phone call to Will County just because they're the only other county in the state with an executive as well, just to try to get a bit of a. I mean, I know population-wise they're about 3 times our size, but just to kind of plot their points on here, each of their treasurer, clerk, circuit clerk, auditor, coroner are all set at $91,116, which comes in under ours. Their executive is set at $93,116, although there is also an additional $6,500 for being a liquor commissioner. Their sheriff is the only one that's broken out higher than that, and that's at $110,923, which is also still lower than ours. Serving a bigger county with bigger inputs. Take that information as you will. But also the counties that we did get compared to, which would be Sangamon, Peoria, McLean, Rock Island, Madison, all float roughly around 28,000, maybe slightly less for one of them. Annual income per capita, we sit at about 24,000. So not that that necessarily is the metric that we want to look at, but based on what our average constituent makes, the difference in that is kind of reflected in what our county officials currently make. It's not that much of a different percentage when you look at the difference between ours and those. So just because I was interested in having those numbers, I thought I would look at them and tell everybody what I found. Thanks.
Other discussion? Mr. Patterson.
Just kind of clarity on this recommendation. So this would be, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be 2 parts. It would be creating equity where the one office has fallen out of line with the others, and then it would also be a 2% increase to the salary of all of them.
Right. So folks may or may not, I mean, new board members probably don't know this, but you have to set this salary 180 days in advance of an election. So the county clerk, treasurer, sheriff, and county executive were actually set before the election, this past election, so the 2018 election. So we're setting these for the next election. That's why, if you notice on the next page, they actually expire in 2021. So we'll be back in front of this committee in 2021, late 2021, to talk about it for 22 through 24 for those 4 offices. So that's kind of why this is happening. But yes, it's to get them equitably back to where they should be in 2020. And then 2021, it would keep them at that same equidistant mix.
I would say for me personally, I think that right now there's lots of discussion about limited funds and obviously discussions about big spendings on the horizon, particularly when it comes to facilities. I just don't think it's appropriate right now to vote to increase the pay of elected officials. I think our elected officials make plenty. Will County has about 1 million people, and they pay their people less. And also comparing to other counties, I think is not really relevant in the discussion of elected officials. we're not competing with any other county to recruit elected officials. I mean, that's carpetbagging. I don't think that that's something that our society really values. So for me, I just don't think we should be increasing the pay of elected officials.
Mr. Ingram?
To that point, though, I will say that while I generally agree that we're paying people pretty well as it is, I will say that that fixing of the discrepancy to bring the circuit clerk even with everybody else. I don't know what happened. Somebody did a miscalculation at some point or whatever, but I do think regardless of whatever, I would support that. I think that needs to be evened out. So I think that's kind of in here anyway, but basically I kind of agree with what Mr. Patterson just said. I just do think that we want to make sure that we create the level with the circuit clerk's office.
Ms. Furtado?
So just two things. I agree with Mr. Patterson. However, since some of these folks, for just now talking, I agree about the evening it out in 2020. And then since some of these folks, we've already voted on a 2% increase in a previous board, in order to keep it evened out, we'd have to vote for the 2% for this option. In other words, we're going to get out of that balance again. Some of them are just going to jump way ahead. But I do support you for the downstream. I do have a question that I keep meaning to ask and not ask, is even though it says the increase on this chart is 2%, when I looked at the budget documents, it doesn't go up 2%. Why? Because for that line in all of these different elected offices of the elected officials, if I recall correctly, I don't have it in front of me, it goes up like 0.25% or like weird amounts, a couple $100, but it isn't 2%. So I just was, and if you can't answer that right now, that's okay. But I just wanted to ask it while I remember. I keep meaning to ask you this, and I keep forgetting. But so is it really going up that much?
So for the elected official line, the elected official salaries are different than all of the other county salaries. They start December 1 versus January 1. So the increase, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I think there's 1 month of an increase that affected the budget. Are you talking about for 2020? Yeah, 1 month, although we haven't, so that would be true of all of the clerk, the treasurer, the sheriff, and the county executive. Their increase would be in the 2020 budget for the 1 month.
And it's 1/12 because the elected officials start
Correct.
December 1st. So you're only seeing 1/12 of the increase. So you would have to go back. You would have to go back and see what they started at on December 1st of the prior fiscal year. So the reason you're seeing a small percentage, it's just the 1/12 of the, you can't take it times there. You'd have to go back to the prior year, add the 2%, and then you get 1/12 on top of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that took a little while for me to process that as well. Mr. Vachaspati, did you have a question?
Well, I don't know if I raised my hand, but I do have a question, which is that when these are set, they're set, right? Like
Right, we can't.
There's no,
So
takes
we
and backsies.
will only affect the 4 that are in bold.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So the other ones we've already set for 4 years. Yeah, I guess the 5, but the one's our county board chair.
And I mean, we can't do like take backs on those, right? Like
No.
in the okay.
No, you cannot. Yes, Mr. Rector.
Yes, I'd like to go on the record. I don't know what's going on, but I actually agree. Mr. Patterson and I are on the same page as far as raising elected officials' salaries, and I'm really excited. So I wanted to publicly say that Mr. Patterson and I are actually on the same page on this. So, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good for you, Mr. Patterson. Yeah, Mr. Ingram.
Germane to the discussion, I guess, too, is that when I was speaking with somebody from Will County, she was mentioning that I think the number that she said was it's been 12 years since they've done an increase in any of the salaries, which I just thought was interesting. I mean, obviously they're not having a problem getting people to run for these offices, and I don't think we would either. And again, we're looking at all these numbers and increasing a bunch of offices, but we've also added a new office within the last year that incurs quite a bit of expense. So that's kind of, I guess, maybe one other thing to consider is that we now have another $117,000 position that's part of this schedule.
Okay, if it's all right, I mean, as far as chair's privilege, I would like to just suggest that in order to get these back in alignment, we take care of 2021. And then if we want to go with no increase, let's do it in 22, 23, and then, or 22, 23. And then we pass that on down the list so that we remember when we're here in 2 years, hey, we need to hold everybody else status quo as well. That way we keep some equity in between those positions.
If you're making that as a motion, that the recommendation and then option 2, I would second it.
I can't make the motion.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I'll make the motion based on that.
No, wait,
yeah.
there's already a motion on the table to accept recommendation 2021.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that motion that we then add option number 2?
Who has the motion?
All right, I make an amendment to the motion that we go with the recommendation and then do option 2.
Second, there's an amendment on the floor and a second. Just so the public knows that option 2 in our board packet is to hold compensation flat for December 2022 and 2023. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, we're going to vote on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. Then we go back and vote on the main motion as it is amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, so motion passes as amended. Okay, item 3, E3. An ordinance establishing a county cannabis retailer's occupational tax. This is the attached ordinance is a model ordinance that's been adopted, I believe, in another county. Can I get my memory serve me right on that?
It was provided by UCCI as
Okay.
a model for counties to look at.
Okay.
So.
Is there, well, it's going to require, I guess it's a chair's privilege if we want to discuss this before we decide on a motion. There are blanks to be filled in here, but it is not informational. And the reason we need to bring this forward is if we want to start to collect sales tax on legal cannabis sales, we need to have this approved out of committee tonight, and then it would get approved at the county board, because if we don't have it done by September 30th, we miss the first quarter of sales tax. So apologize for this coming at kind of a last minute, but again, if somebody wants to make a motion, that's great, but if you want to discuss first, there are blanks that are here that we need to come up
Most of
with.
the blanks seem to be this county, though, areas of Champaign.
Well, you've got up to 3.75% and 0.25% increments, and you've got up to 3% and 0.25% increments. So I'm looking for the pleasure of the board. I mean, I'm not talking about the blanks that talk County of Champaign, State of Illinois.
Jim, could I say something a second?
Yeah, please.
So it was presented by UCCI to the counties as a whole to say this is a model that meets the requirements of what the requirements would be to establish an ordinance in all the counties in Illinois. However, our state's attorney has not vetted it at this point. So the decision really tonight, if you want to move forward to the full board with the recommendation, would be that you don't need to approve this exact ordinance right here, but you could establish the amount, and then we could draft the resolution for the full board meeting. based on what the county, what the county attorneys look at and see if they want to change anything.
Is that understood by the committee? Okay. If you're gonna wait for the chair to suggest, I would suggest that we take full advantage of, take the full 3.75 out in the county in the unincorporated areas, and the full 3% in the municipalities in Champaign County. But that's a suggestion. We have a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Clifford, second. Discussion. Yeah, Mr. Vachispati.
Yeah, I was just looking over because this is what I do for fun. I was looking over the cannabis law that was passed, and I don't think this is correct. I think we get up to 0.75% in 2.5% increments of the gross receipts of sales made in a municipality, because the way that works is that municipalities get up to 3% in their municipality, and then we can add 0.75 on top of that. And then, so if we maxed out both of them, the total tax to the consumer would be 3.75 in the county, all going to us. And then in a municipality, it would be 3% going to the county and 0.75% going to the municipality, or going to us. 3% going to like the city of Urbana, and 0.75% going to Champaign County.
We had this discussion at Finance Agenda Review, but Tammy, can you provide?
That was how the legislation was originally written, but then it was changed prior to approval. And I did speak with the state's attorney's office about that, and they did say that what is in here tonight is what was passed by the legislature.
So just to clarify, then the total tax in like Urbana would be 6%?
If they were to approve 3% and the county were to approve 3%,
Correct, yeah, 'cause
that's my
Urbana did
understanding.
that, yeah.
Mr. Patterson.
I guess just to clarify, so has the state's attorney's office reviewed this? Because I thought a second ago we said they hadn't, but then Tammy said that
They haven't reviewed this ordinance. They reviewed the legislation that was passed, the final legislation. Other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, we've got some items for discussion only. The first one, item 4, Commercial PACE Funding Program. Who did we have? Did we have anybody to discuss this one? I didn't think we did.
This is information that we received through John Hall's office. Someone inquired whether the county operated this program, that it's a new program started about a year ago by the state that the county can participate in. It's a financial incentive program for people to build energy efficient commercial properties. And there was an inquiry by a potential developer about whether the county offered this. And John looked it up, and this is the information he sent me just to look at. We don't have anybody that knows any more about it than that at this present time. But if you're interested in doing it, we can investigate it further. It's basically I think a low income or a low interest rate loan program that's operated through a state broker. But I don't know if there's an obligation by the county to do certain paperwork, if we have to be on form a board. I don't know what the requirements are.
Yeah, that's, now that we talk about that, that comes back. I mean, Illinois Finance Authority is kind of a pseudo-state organization that puts together low-cost or low-interest rate funding for projects like this. I mean, they've done several things, but this has to do with commercial energy efficiency. Again, we've had an inquiry. I assume this is going to go through finance because it is a finance item and not come through ELUC, even though they inquired there first. So right now we have nothing. I guess it's open for discussion whether you want to seek a resolution for it. Again, I guess from a finance perspective, I would like to see what sort of involvement we would have as far as paperwork. If it's something where they need our approval to do most of the work out of RPC or do most of the work out of some other agency, I'd be all for it, being low-cost loans. But if it's going to require a lot of work for us, I don't see much gain for us other than providing a service. Ms. Furtado?
I agree. I think that we as a county should do what we can to incentivize development and especially to incentivize green development, energy efficient development. I think I would support the idea of doing some more investigation to see what the burden is. I mean, if it's a low threshold burden and this is an opportunity that we as a county aren't taking advantage of, then we should definitely, do that. If it is going to be a high burden, it seems as if our staff is pretty maxed out, and so that would be something we'd have to weigh. We've only, like you said, had one inquiry about it, but I think if I would support doing some more research as to what the burden on the county would be, and if it's possible, taking advantage of this opportunity. But so that would be my thoughts.
Yeah, if it's okay with the rest of the board, I will make these contacts. If you choose to put me in charge, I'll make these contacts and see what kind of further things we might need to do. Is that okay? Everybody's given the thumbs up. Yeah, I think I just volunteered for something. That's not good. Okay. And then discussion only. We have members here. Brian Moody from the Douglas County Economic Development and Laurel Berggren. Are you also with the EDC or just Douglas County? Okay, she's a consultant working. They want to talk to us about the enterprise zone proposal that's in your packet. So if you want to come on up.
Want me to start? All right. My name is Brian Moody. I am the Executive Director of Tescola Chamber and Economic Development. But the hat I'm here tonight, I am the Douglas County Enterprise Zone Administrator. So we were approached by BayWa, Renewable Energy, and ARC Perspectives, Laurel's consulting firm, and approached us about the potential to amend our enterprise zone that would we consider expanding to include their project, basically so that they could avoid sales taxes on their project. And our board is willing to do that, and that's why we're here.
And to give you a little bit of a background here, you all had voted to pass the special use permit for a solar farm that is proposed outside of Sydney, Illinois. And in the process, we have been approaching, Champaign County has 3 different enterprise zones. They're all associated with municipalities, and really their focus and their mission is to do economic development within the confines of those towns. And so we really met, I wouldn't say opposition, just really nobody interested. And then we took a look at Tuscola and their enterprise zone, which is more regionally focused and not necessarily centered around a municipality. And so we discussed it. The BayWa project, as far as generation of electricity, may have found some synchronicity down there in Tuscola with some of the large manufacturing companies. And so this is the reason why we are looking to do that. When we, and I would say I'm a consultant, and I say we, I work for several companies, but BayWa being one. When we did the financial projections as far as the Prairie Solar project is concerned, there was no sales tax included in there as far as being an economic benefit. Also, the other thing is generally almost everything is going to be, with the exception of some of the local gasoline and that sort of thing, a lot of the stuff is going to be shipped in from other places, so the contractors really are not located here in Champaign County. So as far as impact on sales tax that you may have gotten, there will be very little.
Yeah, and just to touch on what Laurel mentioned about, our enterprise zone is probably a little different than how you may be familiar with enterprise zones in Champaign County. Again, we're a very rural county. Douglas's population is about 20,000. We have 6 or 7 different communities that we were able to reach out, and we've targeted certain areas that are ideal for development based on their infrastructure. And then we connect all those areas by rail. And so that's exactly how we would do that. In this case, unique to many other zones because we're only 2 years old. We were recently approved by the state just a few years back. We have not used all of our area. So we've used a portion of it, about 12.5 square miles. And so we have some a room to play with. We have some additional room that we can reach out and add other projects. And this is really just kind of a perfect fit as far as what we're looking for in our zone, what some of our goals are focused around. They tend to be very focused around large manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, and renewable energy, which is really where we've put our efforts in the past probably 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, some of the things that, one of the reasons why we need to come here is that Tuscola, Douglas County's enterprise zone would add Champaign County, or they would add themselves as a designated government that participates in the zone. An enterprise zone I've worked with a lot in Northwest Illinois through Whiteside County does something very similar to Tuscola. They send out like extensions to projects, and basically the projects are able to use the enterprise zone benefits, and then they actually retract that particular area so that they can use it for other projects. And I guess, and I'm speaking from Brian now, I would think that adding Champaign County as another government to this particular group, not only the Baywa project would need the enterprise zone extension for only a couple of years, and so that would give opportunity there in the future if there's other rural projects. And like I said, I'm speaking for this man. He's probably going, oh my God.
It's very much our strategy over the past 10 years to work with the counties around us and try to find projects that are a good fit for our area, fit the infrastructure we have, which is, again, very industrial. We're very focused on that type of recruitment, and that's not always, I think, the type of development that really is sought in Champaign County. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to really balance those things out and work together.
Okay, questions, Mr. Vachaspati?
Yeah, so maybe I'm the only one here who's unfamiliar with the details of an enterprise zone. So my understanding is that you don't have to pay sales tax if you're located within the enterprise zone. Is that right?
So you can file for a business materials exemption certificate.
Okay.
So basically a project, Laurel or Baywa would come into my office, fill out the required paperwork, and then in pretty short order, we basically verify the property, verify its location, that it is in the zone, and then we can grant that certificate, and that does exempt them from sales tax in the state. So they have to file a use tax report. Sales tax would typically not be charged because a lot of these contractors will not be inside the state. Right. And so the exemption would be on that 6.25%.
Okay. Do they still pay local sales tax?
Most of this is not going to be generated locally, so they do not. When a contractor, has a contract, basically they're the people that are responsible for the sales tax. And then if the contractor is not located within Champaign County, and in your case it would be in the rural area, because it's in either order. If they're in the municipality, then local taxes go to the municipality.
Right.
If they're out in the rural areas, that goes to the county. But if the contractor is not based in any of those areas, perhaps the contractor comes from Minnesota or something like that, even though they hire all the local labor, their company, even though they aren't located here, still has to pay the 6.25% sales tax on building materials to Illinois. And so they're really not part of your area because they're not a company that is registered here in Champaign County.
Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Vachaspati?
Yeah, but I'm not sure what it is, so I'll let someone else.
Ms. Eisenman was next.
I guess I'm just curious, why should Baywell not have to pay sales tax?
Okay, and that's a really good question. What Baywa is doing, basically, to get a solar project going, okay, to actually get to the point where you're going to build, you have to have your land leases, you know, your site control. You have to have your permits in hand, which you were gracious enough to allow us to have a special use permit. And you need an interconnection with the utility, which they're in the process of doing, and there seems to be absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But then the last thing is you have to have a power purchase individual or entity in order to sell your power. Here in Illinois, at our price of electricity is very, very low, and for them to become competitive as far as their pricing is concerned, they have to really, really cut down cost. And the sales tax in this particular case is going to amount to be about $10 million. So it's a lot of money, and it will actually move the needle on the price of power, the price that they can offer to companies. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, your follow-up.
I guess I would just say that that would be a lot of money that could go to the state of Illinois, if not to Champaign County. And I kind of find it the ultimate irony, because I sit on the ELOC committee as we granted the special use permits, and they were telling us, I was wanting to ensure that we would get the benefit locally of having the electricity, and they said, oh, we can't control that. But they were guaranteeing that there would be jobs locally and all that. And then here, they're not even going to buy the products in state, and that just ultimate irony. I don't
Yeah,
really,
no,
I don't
basically
really know
what
that.
we're looking at is solar panels, okay? I mean, the biggest part of the building materials are the solar panels, and I don't believe there's a little tiny manufacturer in Rockford, and that's about it as far as what is available here in the state. Yeah.
Mr. Patterson, you had the next question, then Mr. McGuire.
I guess I'm still confused on when you talk about sales tax. What does that mean? Because you said it's not going to be really applied to us locally because they're not based here locally. So what are they being charged sales tax on? Like could you give me like a tangible example of like what would apply to this situation?
Okay, in this situation, okay, solar panels would be a really good example. And basically what happens is the contractor at the end of the project has to put in a report to the state of Illinois that says this is what we've used. It's not a retailer's occupation tax, it's a use tax, and we don't actually have sales tax. I mean, we're kind of talking about something that doesn't really exist in Illinois, but it's a use tax that they have to pay. And basically they're required to, report what it is that they used here in Illinois, basically added it to the real estate, and that's what they're expected to pay the 6.25% on.
Mr. McGuire.
So you're selling electricity? Is it sold in Champaign County? 'Cause
Yes.
it's
Oh, yeah, very
produced-
much so. And if
paying
anybody
tax on it?
here knows anyone, large user, who needs to talk to Baywa about buying power, we're very happy to talk to them.
So what has Sydney said about this?
Excuse me?
What has Sydney said about the enterprise zone?
We haven't talked to Sydney. In fact, this is our first conversation because of the fact that you would be a designated government, just to kind of float the idea and see what you think. Yeah.
So are there other enterprise zones that travel across county lines?
Yes. Lots.
Is there one that travels across Champaign County lines?
Douglas, for instance, travels across the Douglas-Moultrie County line.
Moultrie County.
Yeah, an example would be Whiteside County, which I'm really familiar with. Whiteside goes to Carroll, Joe Davies, I believe they go to Lee County, so multiple counties, yeah.
Mr. Storr, then Mr. Ingram.
Thank you. I'm still pretty confused about this. I'm looking at this map, and I don't even know, is this Sydney? This is Tuscola. This is a terrible map. I
apologize. I will pass that on to our county GIS people and be happy to get you another map.
Oh, I think so. It's very difficult to,
It is a copy of a color document.
well, even so, So is this kind of area that's kind of north? Yeah. This, okay. All right.
I can orient you a little bit, Chris, if you're looking at the map. So at the bottom, you see the small little squares. That's still in the county below us. So when you hit that point, when it becomes more vague, that becomes Champaign County. So we're going up through, that's the railroad line that goes up from Tuscola through Sydney.
I sort of get that, and this is a terrible map. And, no, I used to make maps for part of my work, and this is very, this is an example of how to confuse somebody with maps.
About cooperation of shape files.
Yeah, and I apologize. Darlene gave us a call on Thursday and said that she had put this on the agenda. And so I think you're seeing it in a very raw and rough form.
So, yeah, I don't, you keep referring to this company, Baywa. Is that in the memorandum of understanding or not?
Yes, yeah. Basically, that was an agreement because Baywa had approached Douglas County and just wanted to know and that they were willing, to do this. And so that's an agreement between the Tuscola Douglas County Enterprise Zone and Baywa, the company that I do consulting work for.
How do you spell Baywa? Is that actually somewhere
No,
in
it's a
this
Prairie Solar
document?
LLC.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is an agreement between the LLC, okay, the Prairie Solar LLC, which is owned by a company called Baywa. It's BAYWA, and that is the shortened version of a German company. I can't think of it's Bayerische. It's a German company, a very large company that worldwide does actually farming implements and energy being part of their worldwide effort to do things in rural areas. Very large company's been around, I think, since the 1920s, out of Munich. And
Okay, Mr. Ingram.
Quick question for the executive. I'm guessing we don't, to my knowledge, have anything like an exclusion zone here in Champaign, like nothing even of the sort.
No, there's 3 municipalities in Champaign County that have enterprise zones, but the county itself does not.
Cool. I heard that the 3 municipalities had it. I just wasn't sure about us. Okay, so I guess I understand why Douglas would want to do this, looking at the $5,000 application fee to cover costs, and then apparently $45,000 that they're paid after the sales tax exemption goes through. I don't understand why we're supposed to be excited about this. I guess they're
Well,
getting
no,
they're
I
getting paid for
understand.
this. We're not.
right.
So
right.
what is? There's no really incentivization for us to vote for this.
There is no direct incentive to Champaign County, unless
And
Laura
not a whole
will
lot
tell
of
you otherwise, and not a whole lot of incentive for Douglas County. Unfortunately, and I don't want to get into too much of a state commentary, but the rules are what the rules are. And unfortunately for some of these projects, to be able to get incentives, they need to kind of push it over. The programs exist, and so they have to reach out and try to find people who are willing to work with them, and can they find someone who understands that? So I think what was unique here is that we had really set up our enterprise zone with that sort of in mind. So don't know how many are familiar with, but I'm also the fertilizer plant guy from Douglas County, and one of the projects that we've worked on is a water supply agreement with the sanitary district to supply water to the plant. And so because of all that had happened, the group that went after, our group led the application effort to pursue the enterprise zone, but we very much had that in mind, that there may be other projects that are out there again, knowing the enterprise zones here are very much focused on the municipalities, and they have kind of different objectives than the rural areas.
Just kind
Yeah,
of.
I think the advantage to Champaign County is really the economic benefits. Even though a contractor may come from somewhere else, all of the labor is going to be locally sourced. There is 16, I believe, landowners involved in this, as far as leasing their land. It's a $250 million project, and that even though they're spending a lot of money for solar panels, a major portion of it is labor that's going to be local.
Mr. Esri.
Yes, thank you. This is, I guess, for Darlene a little bit. Those 3 enterprise zones, they are not the counties, but do we not participate in at least one of them, I think? Or if not all 3, we participate in all 3? Or I think so, yeah. So they aren't ours, but we have agreed to go ahead and basically say that in those enterprise zones, yeah, the county agrees that we aren't going to collect sales tax as well for the appropriate entities that apply for the qualifications to not pay sales tax. So just saying, yeah, that we don't have one of our own, but we do participate already.
Yeah. And providing this project goes through, and really the cost of power is a big deal. Okay, just because it is so cheap here in Illinois. But, we're looking at, the property taxes alone for Champaign County here it starts out at about $94,000 a year. The other thing is, the schools, and we are talking, as far as the trades are concerned, because this is required, especially if it's in an enterprise zone, is required to be a prevailing wage projects, which that's really the amount of it's an 18-month project, $250 million. Our construction trades have estimated that it's about 2.5 million man-hours, and that's all labor that comes from around here.
I guess just my only final point to that would be just from an economic developer by practice and trade, the ability to tout that project as another project that got done in Illinois and that was a successful project. That's really what I'm looking to get to at the end of the day.
Mr. Pedersen.
Question about the $2.5 million in labor hours. That's going to be for electricians primarily? It'd be electricians?
Yeah, it's electricians, operators.
How many individuals do you think that is?
Excuse me?
How many individuals does that come out to the 2.5 million man hours, do you know?
Oh, goodness. Well, we have to divide that by, because they're full-time equivalent. I'll get back to you in a second.
Okay. You had mentioned a second ago that 2.5 million in man hours is going to come from local labor.
Yes.
Okay. In the past, when they discussed that, they said that is there enough electricians in this area to fill that? Because we were told that it was going to be people from out of area coming to work.
Well, basically, what they do is they pull from the pool. Our local electricians then pull from people that come out, the
Okay.
surrounding areas.
So I guess just to clarify, it's not 2.5 million in local labor.
Well, actually, the numbers of people, because it's an 18-month project, and I'm guessing right now, really guessing, I think it's about 450 people.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's darn close.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that moving forward, because last time somebody from Baywell came, they said that the labor wasn't going to be local, and you just said that it is. So
Yeah,
just wanna clarify for the
I
record,
think
it's
I
not
think you
gonna
may
be.
have misunderstood that, because most of the.
I think you might have misspoke, but I definitely
Okay.
didn't misunderstand.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
ahead.
no.
Thanks.
Yeah, we've been working with the local electrical union and that kind of thing, and because of the fact that it is prevailing wage, I mean, it's going to be you're going to be seeing your local trades there. And over 18 months, if you're looking at 450 people, you spread that over 18 months, that becomes less, over that.
Yeah, so, my initial thoughts about this were, sort of negative. But I sort of see see why we might want to at least consider. Effectively, what we're doing is subsidizing this project if this goes through. I would want to know if there is going to be any expected financial impact on the county because of lost sales tax revenues and how much that would be. I would also want to, I would feel much more comfortable with something like this, especially with regards to things like local labor, if there was a PLA.
Totally understand that one.
And and so, you know, this is something I'm gonna have to think about, and you know, but I could see a scenario in which I'm not entirely opposed to this, which is more than I thought I would be, you know, 10 minutes ago.
Mr. Rosales, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my concern is that it's hard for me to wrap my head around this because enterprise zones are usually contiguous to the counties, and this is not, this you're making an exception because you're using the railway. And then I look at enterprise zones as well as building up the infrastructure, building up the roads, building up the electricity and the power. But you're using the railroad out of the county to establish an enterprise zone that is not even contiguous to our counties, not even to Sydney, and it's attached by the railroad. So you're only using the railroad to transport to and from the site?
No, no, no. Actually, how an enterprise zone works, and you know, this is something that the state invented. Basically, the concept of contiguous, how they do it is they do connector strips, and what are they, 3 feet wide?
My favorite line from the state when we went to apply for this was, "This is where you gerrymander." You know, that these do not look like square blocks that are contiguous, that these are, and so that's really where we came up with our concept. Darlene is absolutely right. We do not have to follow the railroad in any way, shape, or form. It's not project related. That is just how Douglas County went about connecting the different parts of the county. So what's unique about our proposal is that we looked for areas that were potentially right outside of a community that were suitable for industrial development, and then let each community define those areas and then connect those. We call it hub and spoke. And so in my mind, that's what we try to do here. We could absolutely decide through the course of our discussions over the next several weeks here, months, to pick a different 3-foot corridor to reach Sydney. The state of Illinois, again, in previous policy, establishes these 3-foot connector strips, and that's what you have to do to get from one property to the next.
So this is for information only for tonight?
Yes.
You
Ms. Furtado.
Oh, was I next?
Yeah.
Sorry. It might make sense maybe to bring some of the local labor folks in. I think, just doing the math, I think it looks like it's more than 450 people. If it is, the local electrician union here only has 550 members, and that includes lots of other counties, not just us. So there's no, I mean, they're for sure going to be journeying people in. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not important for local labor, but there just isn't even the capacity. I mean, if they brought in an apprentice class of 200 people, they're working on other jobs, line jobs and stuff like that, right? So there's no way that there's not enough local, and even local broadly defined. But that doesn't mean that it's not real important for local labor. It just means that it's not 100% all going to be local.
Yeah, and I think too, during I believe the ELOC committee vote, I think you're on that one too, right?
Yeah.
ELOC committee. I believe during that vote, we had a couple representative from the electricians union there that day, and he was saying that on top of electricians, there's laborers and operators and linemen and all of those, all the different trades involved.
Although I think the reason he was there the most with the work as electricians, I would be interested in knowing, or like even if it's not direct, if it's the money goes to the state of Illinois, is there a downstream impact on us as a county? Like, is there an actual financial impact on us? Is there revenue loss, or do we know? Or is that, or I mean, this is just for discussion. Is that something we can explore?
Well, one of the questions that I'm not sure of is with the new level the playing field legislation in Illinois that's effective July 1st, whether that would cause a significant loss of sales tax revenue to Champaign County if that tax would be collected at the point of delivery which would be in Champaign County. I know there's restructuring of the use tax
Right.
to the level, the playing field legislation that potentially could have an impact whereby this may be a different structure after July 1st than what we're looking at right now.
I'll tell you what, we will definitely look into that.
Yes, Mr. Storr.
Thank you. I'm glad that we're not making any particular vote on this, because I just really feel like there's been so much discovered through conversation, and this is a pretty sketchy, to say the least. I've written proposals, and
Well,
this
like-
is, I don't,
Yeah, no, this was a result of a conversation I had with Darlene, and we really weren't ready to bring you a full proposal. But I think she was very right in feeling that we needed to get this conversation started. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, let's try to wrap this up into a couple more questions. Mr. Ingram, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm cognizant of the fact that this is a big project. It's there's lots of different facets to it. There's labor, there's things like that. There's a lot of numbers being thrown around about money generated in the county or labor or anything like that. But those are those are the same numbers that were thrown out ostensibly that I recall before voting to allow the project through. I'm not entirely sure. I guess maybe this is just how the timing of this works, or you're just doing your due diligence when it comes to finding things that you can, to maximize every bit of profitability or whatever, which is your job. But this coming after the project's already been, greenlit and kind of dangling this out there as if like there's some language here tonight that basically has kind of made it seem like, well, if this doesn't happen, the project might just not happen. Seems a little strange to me. Maybe I'm the only one, but hearing some language like that, like, well, you should do this because otherwise we're just going to pull it, is a little.
Yeah, no, I don't want to give you the impression that, this is hanging in the balance. But it's also, we may have to, or they may have to wait a while until electricity prices go up in Illinois, in order to make this happen.
Is there?
I mean, it really, this would really help facilitate things.
There were, if I recall correctly, the window on if this was the specific project I'm thinking of, there was a window of time that we had to get it approved because there were credits from the state.
Yes.
Right? Do those expire within a certain amount of time that you would have to do this project with a certain amount of time?
Well,
Could you wait, I guess is my question.
I think the reason why we had to get this one going had to do with the fact that there was the credits, and a changeover in the board, and just following up with the ZBA. I think that was a big part of it.
Okay. All right. I mean, I guess I appreciate the conversation that we're having. I guess maybe I would prefer to have a full proposal, and if we're looking at, I mean, I guess you're kind of utilizing something that Douglas has, and they're getting minimal or not compensation for it. I mean, I'm almost wondering with the money that you're saving and whether or not we're getting a loss downstream from stuff that could have come to us eventually through the state or whatever. I don't know if we would need to be looking at us also asking for something or some sort of offset, because it seems like if we're doing a joint venture between the counties and only one of us is being compensated for it, that seems odd to me too.
Last question.
This is more of a comment. If we do explore this going forward, somebody had mentioned a PLA, and I do think that this is, I mean, in relationship to this project, but also in relationship to enterprise zones, making sure that anytime if we are going to do these kind of tax breaks, that we incentivize local labor, I think is super important. One of my chief criticisms of Champaign is they give tax breaks left and right, and all of those tax breaks, by and large, go to people that do not even live in Illinois building those projects. And that, to me, is, it's funding development, but it's not keeping jobs local, and I don't want to go down that road. So if this might be, something on this project, but in a broader conversation around enterprise zones, I think that we as a county should say, if we are, and I'm not convinced that we should, but if we are going to give this kind of tax breaks, that in writing, there should be something about local labor. To me, that would be a pretty much a non-starter, because I'm very critical of Champaign about it, so I don't want to duplicate that problem on a county level.
Okay, we're gonna move this along with my comments. I guess I look at it from the standpoint of, because you didn't budget sales tax in your proposal, not really our concern. I have serious concern with the new legislation that was enacted in July 1st, that a portion of that money, that $10 million, is going to come right back to the county. So at this point, until I know more, I certainly wouldn't be in support of this. But I think we've got a whole bunch of education that we need to have before we can really move forward.
Well, and
So-
I really appreciate you making me aware of that particular legislation. We definitely need to check into that.
Yeah, because it may not matter. There may be no incentive for Tuscola or Douglas County to have an enterprise zone because you can't avoid it. So level the playing field certainly started to change some of that. So, okay, thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for staying so long.
No problem.
Okay, item 6 on page 8788 is the other side of Mr. Young's proposal, that he would like to increase the travel budget to $10,000 from $2,000. That is going to go through on the budget process. So, I mean, I guess if you want to talk about it, that's fine. But I mean, it's a budget request increase.
Right, that's fine. Just real briefly, I study policy, so and also I like to think outside the box. So I did some little research. I'm always doing that. I checked into some other local businesses and local government companies and how they operate and work. And just looking into how much they have for travel purposes. This right here, I believe we have $136 million budget at one time, or $136 million budget.
The county actually has a $40 million budget.
$40 million budget?
$40 million.
Oh,
The
okay.
136 includes RPC.
Okay. So this right here is just a drop in the bucket, this 2,000. So I raised it to 10,000 just in case. Perhaps we can negotiate and see maybe for next year. But the point is, I like to compare and contrast. I'm always doing that with other agencies and counties and see how they operate and work. And that way, perhaps we can become a little bit more knowledgeable and educated on how things operate and work for future purposes. That's it.
Yes, Mr. Ingram.
I think it was said earlier, but the number was reduced to 2,000 several years ago. And what was it reduced from?
7. It was 7, and then it was reduced to 2. And now this proposal is for 10.
Just wanted to.
For the whole year.
Okay, yeah, Kyle.
I don't know, Geraldo, whoever might have been here at the time, what was the conversation of why it was reduced from 7 to 2?
It was a budget cut.
Okay, but there wasn't any other, just in savings?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the savings that were needed. I believe that goes back to probably 2011. You probably don't know.
I'm thinking that each department was asked to make cuts of various times, and so the board felt they needed to make a cut in theirs as well.
Right. So. Okay, item 7, correction on two items on the August 13th, 2019 consent agenda items, resolution number 2019-187 and resolution number 2019-268. This is for information only, but could you shed a little more light, County Executive, please?
Yeah, there was a clerical error in how it was put into the packet. The numbers weren't correct on the resolutions, and it didn't get put in right, so we have to do it over, basically.
So this will come before the entire
It's
county
this,
board?
yeah, the intention was to approve it, it's just that it didn't get put correctly in the packet.
Okay, so it will come on the county board packet, though,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
We'll just put it in the consent agenda like it should have been previously.
Oh, okay.
If-
Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, with that, wow. No, I'm not going to add anything to that. Anybody else have any other business? You don't, thank you. Chair's report. I don't have a particular chair's report. Items for consent agenda. 9A, 1B2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. D, 3, E1. That's the items I have for consent. Mr. Chair, I yield the floor to you.
Is there any other business? Yes, Mr. Tinsley.
Thank you, Chairman Rosales. It's come to my attention that there are members on this board that cannot get the name right of the longest sitting member on this board. Her name is Coward, not Coward. I want that on record. Coward, not Coward. At this point forward, it will be just received as disrespect. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. Act like y'all know how to pronounce her name. I know it say what it says, but you know how to pronounce it. That's all. I'm gonna do a Jim Goss. I'm gonna do a rector.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Tinsley. Seeing no other business, Darlene, you had indicated that instead of saying adjournment, we say we're in recess?
Will be for the full board meeting. We start our budget process where we go into recess rather than adjourn because we need to keep the board meeting open for public comments and things like that. So that'll be at the full board meeting.
Well, I accept the motion to adjourn. Okay, moved by Chris Storr and Tinsley. Thank you. You all have a good night.